back, everyone, to another episode. I think this is going to be a little mini episode. My name's Emery Wolf. Joining me is
Nick Lamb.
And together we are two camera guys. So like I said, a little mini episode. It's just going to be me and Nick. We're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about the A9 that came out, or I guess is coming out right away here. I'm going to do a rant on Mac. Ran into some issues over Christmas that I just want to talk about and get out of the way. And then we have one overlooming question about kind of I'll call it a camera industry thing. So getting into it, Nick, the first thing I want to ask you is just you got a lot of stuff going on in your background today. Can you elaborate on that?
I got one of those old school soft boxes, flag, just basically setting up my YouTube studio. Probably be the only guy that doesn't have a aperture key light. I've got the one from the 90s back there, but yeah, it works good. So
is this legit going to be your like YouTube studio?
Well, I actually think so, yeah. But I'm going to look the other way. So I'm going to be looking back towards my desk.
Okay.
Because I've got like the 3 monitors and stuff here. I'm going to try it out. I think it might look cool.
Would it be something you would use for like anything else, like any other kind of studio practice you might do?
Yeah, like I could do that. I actually have had for shots that I need to pick up. I've had people just come out to here, set it up and record and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess I could. I never even thought of that. But yeah, I could use it for interviews and stuff like that.
It's kind of funny. Like, so it's your garage, right?
It's my garage, yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many like photographers and stuff like that I've seen that have like studios set up in their garage.
Yeah.
And like,
this is half. Yeah. So like half my garage here is heated and has the studio. The other half is like, well, they're both have tools and stuff all over them. But yeah, the other half's just like a regular cold garage.
That's funny. You're talking about the lights there too. Do you actually, on the light you have in front of you, do you have a softbox on it?
No, well, this one here, I've got a little gel, so I got a little frost on it. Oh, the one back there?
No,
the one that I'm using
the one
here.
that actually shines light on you.
Yeah, this one, I've just got a little frost gel on it to kind of diffuse it a bit. I should have some kind of softbox on it, but I just didn't bother.
And then it looks like you got some of the daylight coming in a window there. That's something like, so typically if you were doing like a studio setup, you just black that out. You got like,
yeah, I would black it out. I've got like the flags and stuff that I can black it out with. I was just being too lazy today to black it out.
Cool. That's a lot more sophisticated than my setup. I basically 3 lights. There's 2 LEDs on either side of me. I just tap that one. That's how close they are to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you see how hot my hand gets there.
Yeah.
They're literally just bicolor LEDs, some cheap Genere ones I think I bought. And then I've got a Genere light stick behind me, which is what lights the background, and there's just a gel, literally a gel, just like draped over
so
top of it.
It's not an RGB, it's just a gel.
Right. I thought about getting an RGB, and I can't remember the brand, but those little square ones that everyone talks about.
This little aperture.
Aperture, yeah, that's what they are. But I don't know. By the time you spend that, I think they're like $150 Canadian. By the time you spend that,
gel's $5.
Exactly. And yeah, so the one day I went out, I bought like, I want to say $100 worth of gels. I think it was 5 or 6 different gel colors. So now I can just mix it up. So if I put it on an Oilers jersey, blue in the background.
Oh, nice. That's what I like that. Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been doing as well. Like every time I put on a different shirt or whatever, it's like, well, what's the complementary color to that shirt?
I just like wearing this camera shirt for this. A friend of mine literally gave me this shirt off of their back one day. I was like, oh man, that's an awesome shirt. I love it. And when we were leaving, they like drove home without a shirt on because they were like, man, you need this shirt more than I do.
That's too funny. So there's more than one skinny guy out in Moose Jaw. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, there's 2 of us.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't think either one of our setups is typical of what someone would actually do. Mine, I've got to break mine down all the time because I'm literally in my kitchen. It might be hard to see, but like just in this corner is my fridge, right? Like
Oh,
all
really?
that
Okay.
mess of stuff is just it's a bunch of photos and stuff hanging on my fridge.
Yeah. I like that look. I know I should have set up. I just didn't. I wanted to set up a backlight and stuff for this today, but I just kind of ran out of time.
You got to try things out once in a while too, right? Like even my setup here too for me is a little bit weird that they're this close and this right beside me, and the problems I'm trying to deal with is no reflection in my glasses and
Mm-hmm.
still getting light in. It's not the best into my eyes, but it's better than if I'm above and I'm just like literally you can see that shadow, right?
Yeah. You know
Just
what
from
I
blocking it.
did the other day? I was on a shoot and I ran into that same thing. I put a reflector, like basically at the base of the tripod, or where the tripod theoretically would be.
Reflect that.
You know, like a few. Well, I guess not a tripod. A few feet in front. Pounded two lights on the side, and then it reflected back up. I actually didn't catch the reflectors in the glasses, and it gave a little light to the eyes and stuff. But I still had the eye light from the side light. I still caught some eye light from it, but it just kind of brightened things up.
I've seen there's a tool they use for portrait photography that's it's literally just like a straight it's bigger than this, but it's like a big straight reflector and it curves and it's meant for that to put underneath to light up
Oh
from the
yeah.
bottom a bit, and then it also gives like a little glow in the eyes, the white shimmer, right? That sparkle.
And do they put it? It's like right on a stand in front of them, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah.
It's like right there.
So it
Yeah,
looks
those look
like a
cool.
little T-bar in front of it or something.
And then, oh yeah, today for the audio, I kind of stepped it up. I got my little Gracie preamp or Grace Design preamp going finally. So I'm not. It probably sounds exactly the same, but actually using some of my gear.
You know, it's funny, like when we're doing this, I can't tell, but when I like edit later, you can tell like differences in audio for sure. So
Nice. No, yeah, your audio sounding good today.
good. Well, Nick, I set up the things that we're gonna discuss here. So let's get into it.
Okay.
The A9, you've had a chance to look at some of the specs. I know we've talked briefly about it before. I don't know if you've had a chance. I think it was just like yesterday or 2 days ago. There's been a couple videos come out.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, Sony's put an
Uh,
embargo on like they can't put out a review or release photos or whatever quite yet,
mm-hmm.
but people are talking about it. So what's your take?
I liked the specs. Sounded awesome. It's still. Oh man, this camera keeps coming out.
That's the best. I think I'm just gonna leave it in.
Um, well, it's the same. Like I would love it, and it all just comes down to the brand thing. Like I just like working with Canon color. So for me personally, I don't see how I would switch anytime soon until I can. Who knows? Maybe I'll try messing around with some of the footage in try coloring and stuff, see what I can do with it. But yeah, I just can't. Anytime I've tried Sony gear, I just can't seem to make it work with my system.
So you're talking about like, are you gonna actually like rent it and try it out, or what are you gonna do?
No, well, I did this, like, I've done this with red footage and stuff like that, where you'll download the actual footage, like the raw footage that's shot on that camera, and people post it, like, you'll be able to find some, and then just mess around with it myself, like in Resolve, and then bring it into Premiere and see how it looks.
What is it about the Canon colors that you particularly like? I honestly I don't fully get it all the time, but I feel like I'm like an outlier. I don't count in the scheme.
Mm. For me, I like the way I can push the saturation and yet still keep skin tones looking nice. That's really what it comes down to. I just like being able to push the saturation, especially so on the C200. It's kind of like the poor man's Alexa right now, where it's one of the closest you can get to the Alexa without being the Alexa.
Right.
But yeah, so if I had an unlimited budget, I would prefer the Alexa. But for what I've got, I like the Canon stuff.
See, and I always think there's like a bit of a like learning curve thing that people have to do with it. Like so, and this is why I kind of personally feel like it's irrelevant. If I was to go in full in on Sony, I would just go full in on it. And if my issue's color, I would work the hardest I can to color.
Mm.
And any differences, I think like in the end product isn't going to be so massive that a client is going to care.
Yeah, you're. I can't argue with that. Yeah, that's right. Like, but it's the lenses too. So like right now, I've got the 1-400, the 85 1.2, the 16 to 35, the 24 to I don't even know what that one goes up to. 24 to 105, the 100 macro, the like, and then I've got 3 or 4 friends that I can borrow virtually unlimited lenses from. So I don't know. It just doesn't make. If I switch to Sony, what I could maybe borrow Matt Howard's stock lens that came with his camera. Like I don't know what I would even. I'd have to buy all new lenses.
Yeah, that's a problem in its own. Before we get into that though, I just want to go back to the A9
Oh
specifically
yeah, I
again.
got off topic there.
No, well, we both did. The is there a specific sort of feature or something that you like about it that you think puts it ahead of all other cameras right now?
Well, when I saw the video for it, the one thing that I absolutely loved was the auto eye focus, which I thought was pretty wild. Um, and then I like the fact that you could shoot 30 frames a second in stills mode. I'd love to try it to actually try to make it work for video, just to mess around with it. I don't know if it's possible or not, but those were the two things that I was kind of like, okay, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I watched Jared Poland did a little
Yeah,
thing with it and he was shooting
he's
in
great.
30. Yeah. And watching it, like the no blackout and stuff.
Oh, did he convert it to video?
No, he just sort of showed like shooting it and what it looked like when you were playing or scrubbing through all the
Okay,
photos.
yeah.
And yeah, it looked really good. What he didn't talk about, or maybe I missed it, was that essential like buffer speed and how many photos you could capture. My guess is that it's like sort of fastest frame rate thing that it's only there's a weird setting you have to do for it too, which again, I don't think is a deal breaker for people, but you have to change the setting, put it into this mode, start pulling the trigger. And then I'm assuming you can get like maybe 5 to 10 seconds tops. But I mean, even
Okay,
that,
yeah.
if you could do that and break out like what you wanted to do, you could use it for video.
I thought no blackout meant unlimited.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that it still had a buffer.
It still has to do it, and you know the other thing too is it's shooting. I think it's like 50 megapixels, right? So the fact that it can shoot 50 megapixels at 30 frames per second is actually kind of mind-boggling,
That's
right?
wild. Yeah.
Um, the feature I was kind of jazzed about was also the frames per second thing, and just like if I'm a sports photographer or you know, shooting anything from motorsports to physical sports, baseball, basketball, whatever, um, or like a bird photographer, animal or something that moves like really fast. Like
Yeah.
that's where I feel like, yeah, I feel like, you know, 30 frames per second is probably like that sweet spot where you could literally capture almost anything. So you just pull the trigger and then pick the best frame.
Yeah, I could have used that 30 for my wildlife, my animal photo that I took.
It would have not helped me at all, Nick. um, yeah, no, it's an interesting camera. It's you know, again, it's one of those things. Actually, the other thing I would take away from it is that it was too close to the R5. Um, now, my reason I'm saying it's too close to the R5, the specs are great. The R5 has a lot of similar specs. I think it's losing 10 frames per second. It's over 20 frames per second though too. But like, so is that a big deal? Is that make or break for someone? Probably not. And the real issue to me is that cost. So I think Sony put it out with like a $6,500
Oh,
cost
is it
for,
that
yeah. And
Canadian?
it's never in Canadian. I'm sure it's
Okay.
USD.
Yeah, you're right.
And then the R5, I want to say, isn't it like 5,000 Canadian? So it's like $1,000 cheaper. It seems the R5 in my mind seems like a better cost value for a camera at this point.
Yeah, well, I guess the 8K video might be a reason to upgrade because I don't think the R5 has 8K, does it?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, it does. Oh, never mind.
The Sony 8K, I believe it's got like a few more like settings and stuff you can tweak with it. And actually, the other thing we're overlooking on the Sony specifically, and this is what you should have been excited about, but I believe it's shooting 4K at 120 frames per second.
Yeah, that's nice.
That is something, because I'm pretty sure there's not a camera. I'm pretty sure the rest of them at 120 are shooting 1080.
But yeah, I should download some of the footage, and I should have downloaded it before we talked about it.
Yeah. What does your C200 shoot for stuff like that? It does it do slow mo?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So it does 60p 4K, but that's in the their raw light codec. But it goes, so when you go from 23976, you're in 12-bit 4K, and then when you go to 60p, it goes to 10-bit 4K. But it's still it's still a really nice image. And then if you want to do 120, it's in one of those goofy slow-mo modes where you have to go down to 1080p, and then it's like a special, it records it in I think it's 30 frames a second, but it does the 120. So it records it in 120, and then it automatically converts it to slow motion, which I'm never a huge fan of that.
So for your slow motion, I've seen you use the 1DX though for slow mo. Is that like your preferred slow mo camera?
No, that was, I lent out my C200, and then I just was shooting something anyway. Because the 1DX has the same problem. I could be confusing these settings, so don't, because I don't really use the super slow mo feature that often. I'll tend to just shoot 60p if I'm on the C200, and then on the 1DX, I try not to shoot slow mo because it only does 23976 or 2997 in 4K, and then if you want to shoot slow mo, you have to again down convert to 1080p. And then it does their weird kind of auto. I don't know. I don't really like it.
So here's the question: why don't you shoot more slow mo?
Why don't I?
Yeah.
Well, two reasons. One, I can only shoot 60p, so I do shoot slow mo on that one, and I'll use it. I find when you shoot too much slow mo, it does take away from your shot itself. So I can shoot slow-mo B-roll, and the only thing I'm paying attention to is background and then f-stop, like for depth of field. Where if I'm shooting a non-slow-mo B-roll shot, you can incorporate more motion into it. But that's why I would tend to not do. I'm not saying I never do, but yeah.
So I'm going to paraphrase this with something I've said a lot, but what you're saying is slow-mo isn't really all that valuable or usable, particularly in a production shoot or whatever you're shooting. In other words, like your ratio, you could spend an hour shooting slow-mo and you're going to use 1 second of it, versus you can spend an hour shooting regular kind of stuff and you're going to use 2 minutes of it.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, you'd have a lot more usable regular speed stuff. Yeah, I'm not saying I never shoot slow-mo, and it can be like, it can add some production value at times. But
I think that drives to the point, like frames per second or running it up maybe isn't like the first thing you should like You shouldn't be like, oh man, it shoots 4K at 120 frames per second. I'm going to buy that camera. Like that's maybe not your buying point, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because like it's fun to do those super slow mo kind of like stylized B-roll videos and stuff. Man, this thing keeps falling. But it's like, what's the real market for those? You know, like how often are you actually selling one of those videos, or versus just showing off with it?
You run into the same thing with drones. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've been asked, do you have a drone? Well, why don't you have a drone? And it's like, because I could use a drone for like 3 shots out of a 3 minute thing. That's 5 seconds. Like, what that doesn't, for me to spend money on it and go through all the stuff to actually do it properly, it just doesn't pay off.
Yeah. Yeah, drone is now the drone you can I've been on shoots where you can really waste a lot of time with the drone, but I've kind of learned to just dedicate like one battery. Just shoot one battery and whatever you got, and then move on to the rest of your shots because you're right, you're only going to use it for 3 seconds in the whole video.
That's crazy. Do you know what? I'm getting kind of ranty there. So I think we'll move on to my Mac rant. So it's a bit of a story for you, Nick, and it's what happened to me over Christmas. So currently what I'm using as part of my setup is an old, I believe it's a 2009 MacBook Pro. So it's
Right
old.
now?
Yeah, that's what's
No,
recording this.
Okay, but yeah, sorry, you tell the story. You just upgraded though.
Yeah, I got all that stuff and like whatever, but I still have the MacBook like for when I want to be like on the road or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Christmas comes and I'm like, I'm going to take home a bunch of photos. I got thousands of photos I haven't edited yet. So I'm loading these things onto jump drive, spending that time, taking them off my main computer, throw the laptop into a bag and ready to go home. And it was about halfway through last year. I made my switch from, well, I shouldn't say I made my switch. I made my switch from my DSLR to my mirrorless in a year ago now. But halfway through the year was when I finally finished all my DSLR photos. Now, one of the changes Canon make was for my 5D Mark II, it was all CR2 files. Mm-hmm. My EOS R, it's all CR3 files.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so I don't really know what the difference is. To me, it's irrelevant. They're just raw files, right? So I've got thousands of CR3 files loaded onto all these jump drives and go home. Plug it into my computer, do a double check. Is all my stuff updated? Yes, kind of. My Photoshop on this computer's 2018 because since they've gone to the cloud or whatever, and I can't update to the 2020 version or 2021, whatever it's at now. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever, not a big deal. Go to open up some photos, can't open them because 2018 Photoshop can't deal with the CR3 files.
Oh, no.
So now I'm like, well, why can't I update Photoshop? Essentially what it comes down to is my MacBook is like the last MacBook before they went to, was it Intel processors?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was the last one before Intel. And that is the last year they did updates for the 2018 Photoshop, which means in 2019, when I bought my EOS R, there's no CR3 files and there was no way to get them on. So I'm just like, well, that's garbage. What else can I do? So I started looking in like, well, can I change it to a DNG file, right? So go on, download Adobe's DNG converter and go to run it. No. Well, what's the problem? Can't install it because you're not on the Intel system. So basically that cutoff, when they switched to Intel, it like completely screwed me over because all the programming, I'm assuming it's in the BIOS and stuff, had to change for these programs to work. So it screwed me over. Like I can't this computer works great. It works. It does the small photo stuff I need, but I need a new laptop now because I can't update it because it doesn't have an Intel processor.
Yeah.
The irony of it is Mac now comes out with the M1, and I'm wondering if this isn't going to happen all over again to people. And then does Mac just like keep doing this? And like, so essentially every 10 years you have to buy a new computer regardless of whether it works or not.
Every 10 years.
Like it's garbage.
You're going to fax your complaint to them on your
Yeah,
it's like 12 years old, Emery. You
I know.
Just got to get a new computer.
It's such a waste though, right? Like it's here, it works, it's functioning, but I have to get a new one just because I can't do any more updates on it. I don't know. It's one of those things that just rubs me the wrong way. Like, you know, our world, we get concerned.
My car broke down. My car's 20 years old. Can you believe?
Actually, do you know what? Ironically, my car is 20 years old and it's still running like a top.
Oh, what a ripoff. 400,000 kilometers and this piece of junk broke down.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, we're living in this world. We're conscious of like the environment and stuff. And like, that's one of those things, like why all this aluminum, all this stuff that has to get recycled, it probably won't get recycled. I'm literally just wasting, like I'm creating this waste for no reason. And it's not because of my choice. It's because of someone else's.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's frustrating to me. Anyways, that's my Mac rant.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
My 15-year-old MacBook no longer works properly. It's a heck of a rant.
I'll let you get it out. Well, how old's your computer? Like, what do you use, and how old is it?
I got a 2015 MacBook, and then like a 2018-ish PC.
Do you know what the crazier part about this MacBook is? So it's a 2009 MacBook. I believe my Mac Pro was a 2014, and I retired that thing 2 years ago to go to an iMac. So my MacBook Pro outlived my large computer, my Mac Pro. And like I was having issues with that Mac Pro. Like stuff was not functioning right. Like the actual physical hardware was wearing out. This thing still works. All the hardware is good. Yeah. Mac. That's how they get
Funniest you. Rant. That's how they the nerve of them.
So you said you run a Mac and a PC?
Yeah.
How come you run both?
That's a great question. So I was Mac only, and then when I went to basically once I started shooting 4K RAW, like on the C200, my MacBook, it was just going to take forever to process the files. And then the price comparison at the time, just hardware to hardware, it was like 4 times more to get the power that I wanted to process those files on PC versus Mac. So yeah, I just went PC. And now I actually like it because there's like every single file that you get, I can run it. Like I've got those emulators or whatever they are on both of them, so that like I can just easily swap the files between the two, and Premiere set up on both. So when I go on the road, I can run Premiere and still edit and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I still like having both. PCs are actually more fun in a weird way because there's like they'll let you mess around with every single setting. So when I first got it, it was like, woohoo, let's check out all these settings, and I was just like messing around. And now it's like I've stopped doing that now, but yeah, I was like going in and oh, look at this, I can change the setting on my graphics card, I can change the setting on my CPU, and I don't know, it's kind of fun to mess around with all that stuff.
Yeah, I ran it like when I retired my big Mac Pro. So it's one of those big silver tower things. And when I retired it was the same issue I was having was my video, ingesting video and everything with video. It just could not keep up anymore. Now, I'm not saying that this laptop that still works would handle it, because there's no way it would handle video. Especially like this laptop went through, from being essentially SD video to to HD video. And like the second that happened, it was just, there's no way for it to keep up. But with that said, what influenced your decision to purchase? You kind of mentioned like money. Was it just strictly like a calculation?
Yeah, well, no. Well, this is the funny part was I did that math, and then when you were thinking of upgrading, you brought out this like big spreadsheet that took the subscription to Adobe into account versus Final Cut versus Resolve, and kind of worked out some math that made the Mac, if you were going to use Final Cut, come more into line with the PC over what was it? I think it was like a 3 or 4 year period of time.
I did it over 5 years. Yeah.
It was over 5 years. It'd break even. Was it a break even point at 5 years? Or?
I believe the break even was at 3 years. And then, so over 5 years, I was going to get more value doing a Mac system and using Final Cut Pro and just the Adobe Photoshop instead of doing a PC and the full Adobe suite.
So do you still have Photoshop though?
Yeah, like I'm that's not the right term for it either. It's like Adobe Photographer or something, because it's Photoshop and Lightroom together.
It's the one that's like $9 a month or $10 a month or something
exactly.
like that. Yeah.
Versus like when you pay, I think for the full suite, $60 a month.
Yeah, I pay something like that. But it's the time to learn either Resolve properly for like, because I can color in Resolve, but to edit in it I'm still like really, it's time consuming, and I've never used Final Cut, so I don't know, the time to do that doesn't feel like it's worth the investment at this point, but maybe it is.
It's one of those things, man. I think it's like all preference. So here's the irony with my day job. I use Premiere. When I cut this episode, I'm using Final Cut. So I jump back and forth between the two. Honestly, the hardest thing for me is to remember the difference between like Command and Control. So like Control C on a PC does something very different than Control C on a Mac.
Yeah.
And even from that point of view, in Final Cut, it's not Command C that you would do. I think it's Command B to cut, right, for blade instead of cut.
Oh yeah, because they call it a blade versus.
Yeah, there's some slight differences like that, but I mean, you're doing a quick keystroke thing. Like, it's not the end of the world. That's not making the difference for me at the end of the day. What I will say about the two products is Final Cut is set up for you to edit a lot quicker. So, and if once you get kind of used to it, it's kind of nice, like how quick you can go through some edits and how quick you can change things with it, which makes it really nice in my mind. Premiere, when you're doing something like more complicated, when you're getting into the keyframes and stuff like that, I think Premiere is a lot better for that personally. That's what I've found. And then, yeah, I think when you work out those costs of how much you pay for Premiere over the years versus your one-time purchase of Final Cut Pro X, 2 years ago. So 2 years ago was when I started this, where I needed to get rid of the old computer and get something else. So I started like weighing out all these options, and yeah, I 100% did the spreadsheet. And I wasn't sure if I was going to go Mac or PC or how I was going to do it. And at that point in time, that was when I started thinking too, like, if I do Final Cut Pro and I want to start getting out of video stuff and do more photo, that makes more sense for me. Let's focus on the photo stuff. What do I actually need from Adobe for this? And then, okay, well, what if I do it that way? And it was sort of playing with all these, I think I had when I started out, I had 12 different options of things I was going to do. And I had a really hard time pinning down how I would configure my PC computer to work for it. Because I basically had to make a PC for video and a PC for photo. And then I had to make that decision as to whether I was going to continue with video or not.
I do like having the nicer graphics card. Although for the price, because right now I can basically bring in any project and it just runs on my PC like really nice, really fast. The exports are like crazy fast. But yeah, I've heard that. I've basically heard that if you're not using Final Cut on your Mac, you're not really taking advantage of it properly.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Although there's this is maybe my second Mac rant of the day. Uh,
Yeah.
I was
my,
I've been cleaning out all my files, and so like even just editing this show, one of the things that Final Cut does that's really nice is that it like renders in the background. So I'll be editing and it's rendering while I'm cutting, which is great. The problem with the show is we have an hour, 3 different versions of video or however many we take for an hour long. That gets to be a lot. So when it's rendering all that, it takes up a lot of render hard drive space or whatever you want to
mm-hmm.
call it. The problem that I found out the other day, which was a lot of fun, was as I'm cleaning out some files, and there was essentially it was almost like a terabyte used up of hard drive space for these render files for just 2 camera guys. It was crazy. And
Really?
I'm like, why isn't anything throttling this or stopping this? Like, how do I do it? And I'm Googling things, and like their answers are like, you just have to delete the files. And like, what kind of answer is that, Mac? That's terrible.
The answer is you just have to delete the files.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's brutal, eh? Like, and like I said, a terabyte. And most people don't even own computers. Well, nowadays they might have a terabyte, but like even that's like this massive amount of storage that like most people don't need. I have more terabytes in my system here than the entire gigabytes of our systems for work.
Well, yeah, that's a better rant than your last rant of my floppy disks don't transfer very fast.
These are real problems, Nick.
Was not expecting. I was actually expecting an Intel versus their own processor rant, but I was not expecting it to be from 2008.
The getting back to that whole concept of things of value, how the hell do these like YouTuber influencer people, like they seem to change their system like every year? It's like the A1 came out. I got to get that now. I'm dropping the Canon R5 and getting it. How can you afford that?
Yeah, like I don't think other than the top maybe 5 guys, like obviously Peter McKinnon can afford to upgrade as many cameras as he wants.
Well, and he's a Canon guy. All his stuff is Canon. It has been for years, right? I think he's sponsored by Canon too.
But most of the other, you're right. Unless there's way more money that they're making than we can imagine, because like Jared Polin just did a thing breaking down his income, and when you take into account all of his staff and like he's not making a fortune off of it, and he's a pretty popular guy.
Yeah, like I watched that too, and I was kind of like man, like the amount of your side work you're doing must be massive. Like,
yeah, he didn't.
How does he find the time to do those YouTube videos? Meanwhile, still do enough to bring in income to pay his staff. Like it's.
Yeah, he didn't, because he just did the YouTube revenue, so he didn't count his sponsors that are in his videos, like all of his other stuff. So
I'm not sure he has many sponsors. Like he makes a lot of fun of like the Canon money truck coming in or the Nikon money truck. Like,
but yeah, so I don't know. I feel like it's either people that aren't saving for their retirement and or people that don't have kids and aren't thinking about like, how am I going to put this kid through university, or maybe they're just younger and not thinking about that. Like that's the only thing I can possibly think of.
Yeah, but I mean, they still got to have expenses, man. Like, I mean, I live in Regina and Moose Jaw, not like, you know, the places
Yeah.
that you need the highest income to live, right? Like I live okay, but I mean, it's $180,000 condo. It's nothing fancy. It's built in the 70s, right? My car, I said, is 20 years old. Like I don't have all this stuff. And I've been like saving up for a year now to get a new RF lens for this camera. Granted, I bought a boat with my brother and father in
What a
between, which
boat.
didn't exactly help the scenario.
Oh no. That's like, oh no. You bought a boat.
I'm not saying I'm making the best financial decisions here.
If you play that back in slow motion, you'll just see like my complexion change when you said that. Oh.
But I mean, it's one of those things, like life gets in the way. You got to deal with things and whatever. And I still can't fathom how some of these guys are doing it. You know, the irony is so a guy I pointed you to this week, Mark Denny, he's a landscaper.
Yeah, I like him.
From, I believe it's North Carolina is where he's at. And he's done it for several years now. So he quit his job 3 years ago, I think now, to become a full-time landscape photographer. I'm air quoting that because that's like a different rant that I can get into later. But he's done a good breakdown of like, so when he started, how am I going to make my money? And the end of year one, how much money did I make? And it was nothing. And then year two, it was like, how much money did I make? And I think it was like 40,000. And then year three, which in 2020 of all things, I think he made like 75, 80,000. And he's giving you all the numbers from like everything from.
Yeah, he broke down everything in that one.
Yeah, he's always done a really good job of it for you. Now, that's good. That's great. It works for him. I'm not sure it can work for everyone. And I don't know if it's fair to say he's making his living doing landscape photography.
Oh, well, he's making his living
making YouTube videos.
Yes, but it's the idea of landscape photography. Like he's still technically, because if he pulled the landscape photography out of his videos, nobody would watch them. So,
right.
Yeah, his was interesting, but the other guys, you're right, I cannot figure out how you can afford to change systems every single year.
Back to my whole point of why I got into Mark Denny as well is he's been using like the same Fujifilm. I think it's an X-T3 or X-T4 or whatever it is through the entire time of it. Like landscapers were a little bit different in that sense. Like we always hold on. I think all of us hold on to all of our equipment for a long time because realistically, we're probably not making that much money in landscape photography. And I mean, too, we don't need the most expensive stuff. Like, do I need to buy an f1.4 lens? Probably not. Not for landscape. I can get by with an f4 because I'm probably going to put it to, f8 or 11 or whatever else I want to throw it at, right?
Yeah. What kind of camera was he using?
It's a Fujifilm. I want to say it's an X-T3 or an X-T4. He's got his video camera and then his stills one. I believe they're both Fujifilm. And yeah, I don't think he's updated or upgraded since he started this whole journey 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you follow someone else and they've changed 5 times in that time. Like, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're either just greatly in debt or just scraping by. Like it just, I can't see a scenario where, unless there's way more money in it, which there could be a ton of cash in it.
That's the only thing I can kind of think of too, right? Like the market in New York, we picked on Jared Poland before, is probably drastically different than the market in Moose Jaw.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Yeah. So, but I mean, how much different? I don't know. I don't understand. I'm not there. I don't think I can grasp that concept. It's like thinking about how far away the galaxy is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. It's probably way different. So it would be interesting to see a breakdown of one of the top guys where they broke it down, having every income source just to see what they're actually bringing in.
Yeah. I guess here's the moral of the story, Nick, is one, it's amazing that someone like Mark Denny can make a living doing what he's doing. Full out respect for him for that. And, I'll be a fan till one of us dies, I guess. And then the other thing that's kind of just amazing about it all is that, people are doing it. And the fact is that you and I aren't, and we probably never will. So it's that like comprehension we have because there's probably no chance of us getting to that level.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a dreamer too, so I don't know. I always kind of think it's possible.
Your wife won't let you not pay the bills, Nick.
Well, I'm not saying, what's the saying? You got to get the boat close enough to the dock before you try to jump in.
Oh man, I got a great story about my dad that follows that. Like, it's not a metaphor, it's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that, right? Like, in your, like, what would your wife do if you told her, like, hey, I'm gonna quit and do just two camera guys full time until we make money at it?
If it was, there'd be an end, like, and what's the part two of this plan?
that's very diplomatic. If I was your wife, I'd just be like, get out.
Yeah, get out. Get out. But yeah, it's like, well, what's the part two? Yeah, it's you're right. The logical factor of like, well, how much have you made so far with just two camera guys? Well, it's not about what we've made. It's more about what we're going to make.
Actually, that's the great thing about the show for us is it's not about what we're making or
So true.
because realistically, I think even too, if this thing blows up for us, we might make say 30,000 a year off the show, which would be like, I think even that's mind boggling to me, but that's 15,000 each. Like,
Yeah.
that does nothing for either one of us.
Yeah. No, yeah.
It buys me a few extra Slurpees.
But the whole, like, for this show specifically, the whole point of it was more to just have intentional conversations about various camera equipment and different with different camera people too.
That's what I've enjoyed most about it. Just sitting down and listening to a guy like Leighton. Again, I keep going back to the story about his dad buying him the camera in that camera store, but it's just a great story. Like, I can visualize that in my head, and it seems like its own little mini movie, and it's nice.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what makes our show good. I think that's what I enjoy of it anyways, and what I get out of it. And quite frankly, I almost feel like if we get paid ever for it, it kind of ruins it. It takes it away, right? Because then you're not so concerned with the story. You're concerned about like what's going to sell.
Yeah, that's actually I'd never even thought of that.
Yeah, just the look on your face, like wait a minute, it would be nice to make money though.
Yeah, it would be nice to make money, but yeah, it's more of thinking, who can we get to interview to talk to that would probably be interesting at this point.
Yeah. Well, Nick, that was supposed to be a mini episode. I don't think it was very mini at all. So maybe we should just wrap it up, call her a day, and yeah, I'm sure
It's
we'll
good.
do this a few more times, just the talks with you and I. We'll have to drag Matt into one of these too.
Yeah, we should. Well, he probably wasn't available today, but yeah, good to catch up with you.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's always good to have these chats. Anyways, until the next episode, take care.
How would you introduce this show, Ruth? If you were, so this show's called Just Two Camera Guys. If you were like to say, "Hey everybody, welcome to Just Two Camera Guys," is that enough energy?
You have a better name.
Here, stand up for a second. Hey, welcome to Just Two Camera Guys.
Boo! Just two camera guys. The most boring show in the world.
So Emery we did a show before you guys got on, and he goes, all right, I want to do a Mac rant. And I was like, all right. And he starts talking about the different processors, and they're switching processors. Emery's rant was that they're not honoring the old drivers from the 2007 MacBooks. That was his rant.
So like right now, my LCD on my camera is like off, but it's still like sending signal.
Actually, I could turn on that. I wonder what it'll even look like, or if it'll blow a breaker or something.
As Nick blows the breaker, and that's the end of our show. Just looks like more light.
That just looks, yeah. Kind of breaks my softs in the front, hards in the back rule, but that stuff is necessary. Like the call to action, that's like marketing 101. At this point, I do love the idea where it's like we're still vaguely unaware that even exists, and still just having these conversations,
Because we're idiots, basically.
yeah. It kind of shows off the mess, though.
It's all right. I like it. You look like you're working.
I am. I'm setting up my YouTube studio out here. I got the light set up, got the flags going.
Let's have like a brief, like how the fuck are these guys changing their camera systems every year talk? It's bullshit.
Yeah.
And then
it is though. Okay, so hold on. I gotta get this camera locked in.
What do you need to lock a camera down for?
Well, here's the problem.
They just stand on their own.
They should. Oh my goodness. That's literally the worst setup I've ever seen. Right on, this is Nick and Emery for Just Two Camera Guys.
So follow us and subscribe and like and do all that stuff that you're supposed to do that we never do to promote ourselves.
I find I do agree. Okay,